Elizabeth Montgomery was an enigma, an actress who lived a life full of secrets, scandal, and tragedy. She was a Hollywood icon, adored by millions for her role as Samantha Stevens in the beloved TV series Bewitched. But behind the scenes, her life was far from the perfect image her character portrayed. From her enchanting beginnings to the turbulent ups and downs of her career, her story is one of mystery and heartbreak. 3 years before her death, Elizabeth revealed a secret that shocked the entire world. Why did such a powerful star choose to live in seclusion, carrying so many secrets to her final breath? Watch until the end of this video to uncover the reason that once made all of Hollywood fall silent. Before we dive deeper, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of tea or just water, and sit back as we begin this journey together. Elizabeth Montgomery was born on April 15th, 1933 into a wealthy family. Her parents were Robert and Elizabeth Daniel Bryan Allen. On the surface, they had it all: money, status, and a beautiful home in Los Angeles. But behind closed doors, Elizabeth's childhood was filled with fear, pain, and sadness. Robert Montgomery was a Hollywood star and a heavy alcoholic. He was often absent, leaving Elizabeth and her mother to fend for themselves. And when he was home, he became violent, both physically and emotionally, often yelling at and beating his wife and daughter. Elizabeth's mother was no better. She suffered from severe depression and was frequently unable to care for her child. As a result, Elizabeth had to learn to survive in the chaotic and dangerous world of Hollywood, a world filled with alcohol, drugs, and sex, long before she was even a teenager. Despite her traumatic childhood, Elizabeth was determined to chase her dream. After graduating from acting school, she refused to live in her father's shadow. She wanted to be recognized for her own talent, even if it meant disappointing her parents. When she asked to appear on her father's TV show, Robert Montgomery Presents, he reluctantly agreed. Yet, deep down, he never forgave her for choosing the same treacherous path he had once walked. From that moment on, their relationship grew strained, a deep, emotional wound that Elizabeth carried for the rest of her life. The admiration and fear Elizabeth felt toward her father had taken deep root in her mind, shaping not only the way she worked, but also how she loved. In her constant search for approval, Elizabeth married Frederick Simon in 1954, a wealthy, composed businessman much older than she was. On the surface, it seemed like a safe choice. No actors, no scandals, a respectable gentleman her father could be proud of. But precisely because of that, it became suffocatingly dull. Elizabeth soon realised she had made a mistake. This man wanted her to abandon the stage, give up her passion, and settle into the role of a polite, obedient wife in a lavish mansion. That was not the life she was born to live. After only a few years, the marriage collapsed, leaving Elizabeth with a weary heart and a fading reputation. Amid this turmoil, Hollywood came calling. Elizabeth was cast opposite legendary actor Gary Cooper, a man who embodied both strength and quiet charm. But what no one expected was how quickly their connection would go beyond the screen. Cooper, older and world-weary, became the source of warmth and understanding that Elizabeth had long craved, something she had never received from her father or her husband. Their secret affair soon became the talk of Hollywood, and once again, Elizabeth found herself caught in an emotional spiral she couldn't escape. After her divorce from Camamon, Elizabeth was determined to start over. She poured her heart and soul into acting, and this time, success finally smiled upon her. Her role in Johnny Cool 1963 established her as a captivating, confident woman, unafraid to break conventions. But just as her career was taking off, her heart fell into the hands of another man, the film's director, William Asher. He was more than 10 years older, charming, experienced, and deeply complicated. Elizabeth knew that, yet she dove into the relationship with the innocent belief that this time she had found the right man. The two married amid the romantic glow of early 1960 Hollywood, the golden age of American television. They quickly became one of Hollywood's power couples, and soon stumbled upon a quirky, promising script, a story about a modern-day witch and her mortal husband. That show became Bewitched, the series that would forever define Montgomery's career. But what began as a dream soon turned into a nightmare. As Elizabeth stepped into the role of Samantha Stevens, the charming witch who could conjure magic with just a twitch of her nose, she instantly became a pop culture icon. Audiences adored her not only for her beauty, but for her radiant energy and mischievous sparkle. Yet behind the scenes, life for Samantha was anything but magical. During the filming of the show's first season, Elizabeth discovered she was pregnant. The production team went into panic. They couldn't halt filming, but they also couldn't let the leading character appear visibly pregnant. Producers scrambled to hide it, shooting around her belly using wide dresses, creative camera angles, and filming her scenes in advance. After she gave birth, the crew rushed to complete the rest of the season. A real-life miracle that earned everyone's admiration. When Bewitched finally aired, Elizabeth Montgomery completely captivated audiences. Producers thought it would be fun to show another side of her, and so the character of Serena was born, Samantha Stevens' free-spirited, seductive cousin. Viewers loved her, and apparently someone else did too. According to crew members, there were times when Montgomery, still dressed as Serena, would leave the set with her husband, director William Asher, and drive to a nearby motel. Rumours spread quickly. While her real husband seemed to be enjoying himself, her on-screen husband was quietly falling apart. Actor Dick York, who originally played Darren Stevens, was becoming a shadow of his former self. A severe back injury left him unable to stand for long periods, forcing him to act while lying down, sitting, or missing entire episodes. But the real tragedy was his growing dependency on painkillers and alcohol just to keep going. One day, Montgomery arrived on set to find York visibly drunk. The pain, the pills, and the alcohol had finally taken control. And in a moment of weakness, he confessed that he was in love with her. The cruel twist. The woman he confessed to was the leading lady, and the man who overheard it, sitting just a few feet away in the director's chair, was her husband. From that day forward, the atmosphere on the Bewitched set grew heavy, as if all the magic had disappeared. Montgomery tried to remain professional, but the tension was impossible to hide. Then one day, during an ordinary shoot, York collapsed. He was carried off the set and soon replaced by actor Dick Sargent. Montgomery didn't dwell on it. She just wanted to move on and forget. But life had another surprise in store. The man who took over the director's chair, Richard Michaels, didn't just direct the camera. He began to direct Montgomery's heart as well. The two plunged into a secret, passionate and reckless affair. In a small production crew, no secret stays hidden for long. Rumours spread faster than any spell could cast. When the truth finally exploded, both marriages, Montgomery's with Asher and Michael's with his wife, came to an end. There was no magic left to save them. Montgomery walked away from her second divorce, leaving behind a studio filled with memories, heartbreak, and regret. As the later seasons of Bewitched went into production, the entire crew's spirit began to fade. Montgomery started to feel trapped in the role of Samantha, the perfect wife, the gentle witch, a far cry from the complex wounded woman she was in real life. She wanted to stop, but instead of offering understanding, the producers placed a mountain of money on the table. And so Montgomery smiled and carried on. The magic no longer came from a wand. It came from a paycheck. After 8 long years, she finally said goodbye to Bewitched. No husband, no spotlight. Yet, for the first time in years, Elizabeth Montgomery felt free. She sought new roles, daring and different ones. In A Killing Affair, 1977, she played a tough police officer who falls in love with an African-American colleague, portrayed by O.J. Simpson. It was a bold choice at a time when interracial relationships were still taboo in America. Some critics praised her courage, while others condemned her harshly. Looking back, it seems Montgomery may have unknowingly escaped a dark fate. O.J. Simpson, her former co-star, would later be accused in one of the most shocking murder cases in American history. Somehow, Montgomery had slipped away from that storm, as if by real magic, lucky to have had no connection to him beyond that film. From a housewife on television, Montgomery had come a long way. Yet, in real life, she was far from a model wife. Still, that didn't mean she was indifferent to values like freedom and equality. As early as the 1970, she became a strong voice against the government. At the time, America was divided by the Vietnam War. Young men were sent to the front lines, filled with patriotic belief, and many never returned. While the media glorified sacred duty, Montgomery dared to say what others wouldn't. She believed the war was meaningless, a deep wound on the American conscience. In an era of fervent nationalism, her anti-war stance drew fierce criticism. But Montgomery refused to back down. She appeared on talk shows and in interviews carrying messages of compassion and peace, a remarkably brave act for a star at the height of her fame. Yet what truly made Montgomery an icon was her fight for women. As the feminist movement swept across America with women burning bras in protest of gender inequality, Montgomery chose a quieter, more powerful form of rebellion. In Bewitched, she portrayed Samantha, a woman with magical powers who was forced to live as a proper wife, always placing her husband first. But through her performance, intelligent, confident, and subtly defiant, she turned Samantha into a symbol of modern womanhood. The New York Times once praised her character as a hopeful figure for a society in transition. Montgomery even infused feminist ideals into the smallest details of her acting. When producers insisted she dress more traditional, she refused to wear a bra, a silent declaration that women had the right to control their own bodies. That small act on national television became a quiet but powerful shockwave across America. But Montgomery didn't just fight for women. She also bravely stood with the LGBTQ+ community during one of the most prejudiced eras in Hollywood. When her co-star Dick Sargent, who played Samantha's husband in the later seasons of Bewitched, came out as gay, Montgomery didn't just express support. She joined him as co-Grand Marshal of the Los Angeles Gay Pride Parade in 1992. In a time when Hollywood was still deeply judgmental, that gesture was a bold declaration of compassion and acceptance. In fact, Bewitched, a show that seemed like nothing more than light-hearted family comedy, carried a much deeper meaning. As Montgomery once said, the witch was a metaphor for anyone forced to hide their true identity, especially gay people. During an era when revealing one's sexuality could mean losing a job or even being arrested, Bewitched became a subtle, poignant symbol of the longing to live authentically and freely. Coincidentally, or perhaps fatefully, almost the entire cast and crew of Bewitched were part of or closely connected to the LGBTQ+ community. Paul Lynde, the witty Uncle Arthur, Maurice Evans, the distinguished grandfather, and even Agnes Moorehead, who played Samantha's strong-willed mother and Dora, were all individuals who lived beyond the gender norms of their time. Together, they formed a kind of chosen family, a safe space where everyone could be themselves without fear of judgment. When the 1980 brought the devastating AIDS epidemic that swept across America, Montgomery watched in anguish as many of her gay friends succumbed to illness, fear, and discrimination. While many stars avoided the subject, she spoke out publicly, urging compassion and raising funds for AIDS organisations. In a society clouded by stigma, her voice shone as a rare beacon of humanity. Then tragedy struck Montgomery herself. She was diagnosed with advanced colon cancer, a disease discovered far too late. Instead of hiding her illness or seeking pity, she faced it with her trademark grace and quiet strength. Just 8 weeks after her diagnosis, she passed away in the arms of her family and friends at the age of 62. Elizabeth Montgomery did not live a perfect life, but she lived a true one. She wasn't the ideal wife or flawless mother, but she was a woman who always stood up for what was right, for freedom, justice, and the right to be oneself. Looking back, Montgomery was not merely Samantha the Witch of American television. She was a witch of awakening, a woman who used her light to expose the darkness of injustice and fear. Her life story is proof that sometimes the greatest magic doesn't lie in the hands, but in the courageous heart of a woman who dares to live authentically.